One of my favorite things in the world to do is watch Friends. I know it's been off for years and years. It's not even around, but I still find myself binge watching old episodes. And I was thinking about this today and thinking, it's the predictability of the friends in the circle, right? You have Chandler with his quirkiness, Monica with her type A of just everything has to be so neat and tidy and organized. It's Phoebe's ability to make you laugh at her silly songs. Ross always comes in with those smart comments, and Joey and him and his food, like it is just so hilarious. And of course, Rachel, she just brings everybody together, and it's just such this beautiful, cohesive team of people. And it's why I wanted to come on and share with you today that I have an opportunity for you to find your friends in the content creation space. So if you are thinking about creating your first or your next digital course, I don't want you to miss this opportunity because Amy Porterfield just opened the doors for registration for her Course Confident Bootcamp. And I'm actually offering a special bonus for anyone that registers for the Course Confident Bootcamp through my special link. So I want you to go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register. That's crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And what you're going to find when you get there is I have this special bonus private podcast series. It's called Money Mindset for Creators. So I want you to go register for Amy's bootcamp, download the podcast, and immediately start listening to it, because what this training is set up to do is to help you get your mind right about monetizing your content, making money so that you can fuel your content creation dreams. So go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register for Course Confident. And I cannot wait for you to find your friends and find the people that will be there for you. Do you see what I did there? Yeah, nice little friends segue connection. Go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And I cannot wait to see you inside. Okay, let's get into today's episode. We have a fun episode here today. We have a listener submitted question, and these have been so much fun. So much fun. I love hearing your voices. Because let's be honest, unless I'm doing an interview show, like it's usually me behind the mic talking to myself. I'm talking to you, but I'm talking to myself, right? And then you're hearing it later after it's been recorded. So these are just a fun way to add a little flavor to the show, hear from people in this community, which again, I'm so grateful for every single one of you. And I just love hearing your voices. And today we have a really fun clip about editing. So we did an episode recently, and I'll link to this in the show notes, about the 7 simple editing tips that every podcaster needs to know. And we're taking that. So like I said, we're going to link to that in the show notes. But today's specifically, we're talking about a software called Descript. So if you've never heard of it, don't worry. We're going to talk about it more in detail. And the question that was submitted today is all about Descript and editing in Descript. And I'm going to share my tips with you. I'm going to share the different approaches that we can take and a few little nuggets of wisdom that I don't think that I've shared here on the podcast before. So I'm super excited. I cannot wait to share more. So let's get right to it. Welcome to the Profit Podcast, where we teach you how to start, launch, and market your content with confidence. I'm your host, Crystal Profit, and I'm so excited that you're here. Thanks for hanging out with me today, because if you've been trying to figure out the world of content creation, this is the show that will help be your time-saving shortcut. So let's get right to it, shall we?
Hi, Crystal. This is Amy Connell with the Graced Health Podcast. I am a solopreneur and do pretty much everything with my podcast episodes. As you know, sometimes editing them can be a little tricky. I was wondering if you had any experience with Descript in taking care of the filler words. So that is where they will take out the ums, uhs, you knows, and all of those other kinds of things. I do record on separate tracks, and I am wondering how this works. So I was wondering if you have any experience with it, what your thoughts are on it, and particularly how this works on dual track recordings. Thanks so much for your wisdom. You're always doing great things. Appreciate you, Crystal. Bye-bye.
Amy, thank you so much for submitting this question. Amy is a longtime community member. I'll actually have to link to her previous episodes that she's had on the Profit Podcast. So I love that you submitted this question about Descript and editing and what that can look like. And so we already talked about Descript earlier in the very beginning in the intro, but I want to kind of give you a visual, right, of what this could look like if you've never used this platform. So Descript came on the scene a few years ago, and I remember hearing Pat Flynn talk about it it was a podcast movement. I didn't go to this podcast movement, but he was doing like a recap of, there's this new tool coming on the scene and you can actually edit a podcast episode. And then now today you can edit video the same way, where you upload a file and it gives you a transcript. And so what you can do is you can edit the transcript like it's a Google Doc, right? So just imagine I record this whole episode, I upload it into Descript, and now I have an entire transcript of everything that I'm saying, and I can edit it. So if I find the word or if I say the word like too much, then I can actually do a control find in Descript, and I can take out those filler words just by hitting delete. Like I can highlight all the ones I don't want in there, hit delete, and boom, they're gone from the transcript and the audio. Yes, it's such a beautiful thing. If you have not used this tool yet, you need to go check it out. Now, people ask me all the time, Crystal, do you edit your stuff in Descript? I don't do it. And there's a reason. There's a main reason. I am set in my ways. Okay. I'm set in my ways. I use Hindenburg. It's what I love to use. And I actually have found because I've tried, I'm like, okay, I'm doing Descript. I actually started using Descript for video editing. So that's super fun. That's super cool. We can talk about video editing, in another episode. But when I'm recording my podcast and the transcript starts coming up, that's super distracting for me. So what I would do if I were using Descript is I would record in a separate platform, then upload it into Descript. And I guess I could essentially turn on Descript and then hide it behind another screen where I don't have to see the words popping up as I'm talking. But that's distracting for me whenever I'm doing solo episodes. So I just wanted to throw that out there. This isn't the main source that I use for editing my podcast, but I have used it. And so I wanted to talk about it today, but I wanted to also level set that this isn't the one that I use all the time. I still use Hindenburg. And then I have used Descript for video recording, which is important, the video editing, video recording, because I wanted to bring two different approaches today. So to get into Amy's question, she's asking about editing, doing all these things. The two approaches that I see to Descript is whether you have an audio only podcast or you're editing with video, because I have found that editing audio only is fantastic. It is so easy. Like I said, you go in, you have this transcript, you can pick out all your filler words and all the things that you don't want in there, and you can highlight them, hit the delete button, and they're gone. They magically disappear from your audio, and you can just take everything out that you don't want there, and everything is pretty simple. But when you try to accomplish the same thing with video, you can run into situations where your audio and your video become out of sync, and fixing those sequences individually, it has been a nightmare. Okay. I have one specific video podcast, it was a video podcast. We can call it that. At this point, it's just a video that I should have published a few weeks ago. It has taken me, I'm not joking, it is a originally it was around a 17-minute video. And I started editing it and I was like, oh, this is great. This is super easy. And then I started editing the transcript of the video and it quickly became out of sync. So my mouth was talking and the audio was not the same as when my mouth was moving. And so I started looking up, I'm like, oh, how do I troubleshoot this? How do I fix this? And I finally figured out how to do it, but it's become a lot more complicated. So for those of you that are looking for a video podcast solution, I still think that Descript is fantastic for video editing. It can just get a little complex if you're editing the transcript and then the audio and video come out of sync. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Again, this is my experience. Maybe I'm doing something wrong and using Descript as a video editor, but that was something that I wanted to point out, that it's super easy if you're doing audio only because you don't have to worry about that video component and things becoming out of sync. Okay. All of that being said, I wanted to talk specifically to you, Amy, about, and your question, because I'm sure there's other people that have this question too, about filler words, because this is something that can be super, super distracting. But I also don't think that you should edit yourself so much that you sound like a robot. All right, because this is something that I have heard on other shows where they say, okay, I'm going to do a solo show and I'm going to edit it and take out all of these words and all of these things. And it goes from how you would normally sound if we were just sitting here talking, right? We're having a coffee chat. We're, just having a normal conversation. And maybe you would say or like or so. Like you would have these filler words in there. When you edit them all out, you kind of sound like a robot and you're actually editing out some of those like breaks, because you can do that as well in Descript. There's this button or this feature where it's like the long pauses in the episode and you can actually remove those. But let's take this into consideration, okay? You're recording an episode, you're trying to make a really important point, and you pause for effect, or you pause to put some emphasis on the point you're trying to make. What if you forgot about that in the editing and you're not listening to it, right? Maybe you're not listening to it. You're just reading the transcript and you're like, oh, I see. You're looking down at the waveform and you're like, oh, there's a big pause. Right? Like, let's remove all of those pauses. Let's remove all the filler words. Let's remove everything. And then you go back to listen to it and you're like, oh my gosh, I sound like I'm reading from a script, or I sound like I just have such a robotic tone to me. And that can happen when you edit out too much of your natural conversation. So while I do think that it's great if you have a whole bunch of likes, so, okay, whatever your filler word is, because it's going to be different for everybody. I say like and so a lot, but if you talk to me in a coffee shop, I'm going to say like and so a lot because this is how I speak. But what you can do is, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, is if you're going to record in Audacity, Hindenburg, or maybe you recorded it in another software, you could have the finished file, because this was part of Amy's question, is I have multiple files and I don't really know how to like get it all together and put it in there. My recommendation for you specifically, Amy, because I know that you have experience with Audacity and other software, is you can put together what would be almost the fully finished file. You could call it the draft file at that point, but have everything edited. So you could have your main theme in there, like if you have intro, outro music, that kind of stuff, your podcast main theme, whatever it would need to be, where it's almost ready for you to upload it to your podcast host like Buzzsprout. Then take that finished file, that MP3 WAV file, and upload it into Descript. And then you can do a control find. So this is a control F on, Windows. And you would be able to go in and find the words like, so, or whatever terms that you're using that are super distracting to you, but you can absolutely cut those out if you believe it's going to enhance the final product. That's what I would think is what I'm taking out going to make it better? If the answer is yes, then I'm all for it. I'm all for it. If you think that that's what you need to do to make your show sound better, then go for it. Like, you have my full support. I want you to do what you think will be great for you and for your audience. But from my perspective, I will tell you this, like, as your podcast coach, as the one that's here, like, trying to give you some advice and education on this, I don't think you have to do that to have a successful podcast. And the reason why I say that is because I listen to so many podcasts and they don't do this. They're highly edited, highly produced. Like, they are people that are making millions from their podcast, and they don't edit out their ums. Some of them don't even edit out their mistakes. They leave them in there because that's what brings the humanity to the table. It's what makes the podcaster really connect with the listener because they're speaking to them just like they were sitting right across from them. They're sitting knee to knee at the coffee shop, sipping their cup of coffee and having this casual conversation. And that is how it sounds when you have that natural flow of, I guess it wouldn't be dialogue, it would be a monologue if you're just doing a solo episode, but you get what I'm saying. Don't edit out too much that you sound like a robot. All right. I just want to make that super, super clear that I think it's a great idea, but don't focus on it way too much. All right. I want to give you 2 more notes about too much editing. So one is, I don't think that you should worry about filler words when it's an interview. And the reason why I say that is because, Amy mentioned she does, solo content. I also know that she does interviews. And so if somebody's like, oh, Descript, what a super cool tool. I'm going to upload my previous episodes that I've edited together or whatever it is, and you're going to upload it in and look at interviews, I think it's kind of weird. Like, I don't like the idea of someone taking my interview. Like, let's say I go onto someone else's show and they go through and cut out, like, anytime I say the word like, or do something that is too much editing, because that's not how I speak. I would be so devastated, let's call it that, if someone heard me on a highly, highly produced, highly edited episode on someone else's podcast and I sounded more eloquent than I do on this show. I sounded so much better. I was a better speaker. I didn't have any of these filler words. I didn't do any of this stuff because I would be a very big disappointment to them if they meet me in person. Because y'all, I'm going to say filler words. I'm going to say y'all. I'm going to say like. I'm going to say so. I'm going to say like, I'm going to throw in probably some other random words like shenanigans that, you're like, wait, what? What did she just say? This is how I talk. This is how I talk. And so I don't want you to over edit someone to where they don't sound like their natural selves. So don't even worry about editing interview episodes that way, because you're putting extra pressure on yourself for this editing to where if you go and listen to, like I said, the top podcasts aren't doing that. So don't put the pressure on yourself that that's the expectation that your audience has, because I don't have that from any of the podcasts that I listen to. I don't expect them to never mess up or to never have any filler words. So I don't think that we should put that unrealistic expectation on ourselves as well. So I just want to throw that out there. And then the other note about too much editing. So that was the first one. Don't edit too much in an interview of the filler words. And the other one is, since I know Amy's a friend of the show and she's had her podcast for a long time, this doesn't necessarily apply to her, but if you're brand new to podcasting, I want to encourage you to embrace that you're going to get better over time. So if you feel like today you say the words or like or so, or maybe again, you have other phrases that you use often, don't be so hard on yourself. You can use tools like Descript to edit those out and to not have them be so present in your content, but also remind yourself, like give yourself grace and know that it does get better over time. I remember back in the beginning that I stumbled so much through my solo episodes. You can go back and listen to them. I've been telling a lot more people lately, like, hey, by the way, did you know my original podcast episodes? They're still out there. You got to dig further for them, but they're still there. I never took any of them down. They all the episodes that I've ever published, you can listen to them all. They are there for your taking. I hate saying that because it does make me cringe when I think about people going back and listening. I haven't gone back and listened in a while, but what I recorded back in the day sounds nothing like what I record today because I have more confidence. I know what I'm doing. I know what my audience wants. I know how to plan content better to where I don't go off on these wild tangents and stories that take me hours to edit later. So just give yourself that grace. If I uploaded this podcast episode today or any of the hundreds of episodes of the show, like we're on episode like 402, if I go back to from today to episode 302, I still make mistakes. This is what I'm trying to tell you is back then I used to make really big mistakes. Today, I still make mistakes. I still have filler words. I still say some stuff that I'm like, you know what? I probably should have edited that out, but I'm going to leave it in. Again, this is my style. This is my style. And I'm okay with putting content out there that sounds exactly like how you would hear me talk if we meet at a conference or I meet you at a coffee shop. So that's my style. You do what you want to do with your show. But I think that it's important that we remind ourselves you're going to continue to get better over time. And all it takes is practice and keep showing up. Keep showing up. But if you want to use a tool like Descript to help you, you can absolutely do that. If you want to learn more, you can go to crystalprofit.com/Descript. I'm a partner and I have been promoting it and learning more about it. I've actually had the program for about 2 years and haven't really played around with it until recently. I was looking at an option for video editing and I thought, you know what, let me try it again. And their tools have gotten a lot better and a lot cooler with video editing. So that's why I've been exploring it more. Again, it's not a seamless process and maybe I just need to learn more about it, but it's fantastic for audio only and for editing. And it can be really, really cool, especially if you do well with written words. Like if you've been a blogger for a long time, then go check it out. I think you can absolutely use it to help you edit your show and make it sound so much better. Thank you so much, Amy, for this question. It was so good. I loved exploring this topic. Like I said, there's a lot of thoughts and opinions and all kinds of different ways that you can look at it. But at the end of the day, I want you to do whatever is going to help you put out a podcast that you feel really good about and you feel proud to share, because that is the way that you can get your message in front of more people. When you're like, oh, I cannot wait for people to listen to this. I put my heart and my soul into it. I know it's edited well. I know that it sounds great. And I love that feeling. So thank you again, Amy, for submitting your question. And if you want to submit your question to be answered on the show, go to podinbox.com/The Profit Podcast. And there's going to be a link in the show notes, but I want you to submit a 30 to 90 second question. Ask anything about podcasting, digital marketing, or content creation, and it could be featured next here on The Profit Podcast. But that's all I have for you today. Thank you for listening. And if you have not already, make sure that you are subscribed or following the show wherever you are listening, wherever you get your podcast. And I would love it if you would take a screenshot and share it on Instagram. You can tag me. I'm at crystalprofitTX. And I would love to know your thoughts on what you thought about today's episode. Or if you have a question, you could also tag me that way, and I would be happy to feature your question on the next episode. But that's all I have for you. So as always, remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere. Hey, Profit Podcast listeners. Thanks for sticking around to a little bit after the episode to hear this special message because I want to hear from you. We are starting a new segment called Fan Mail Shoutouts, and I want to hear from you and I want to hear your questions. What do you want to know? What questions have you been dying to ask me? So here's how to make this happen. Go to the app where you're listening to this podcast right now. Go there. I'll wait a second. Okay. Now, once you're there, you're going to see a hyperlink at the top of the episode description that says, send Crystal a text message. And that's all I want you to do. Send me a text. It could be casual, informal. It could be totally anonymous. Or if you want, you can include your name and the name of your podcast or content wherever you are creating, and I will give you a special shout out in an upcoming episode. So again, go to the show notes for where you're listening to this episode right now, and it will say, send Crystal a text message. And I cannot wait to hear from you and give you a shout out in an upcoming segment of Fan Mail Shoutouts.